Yo, what's going on, E7 fam? I'm Sue, and it's that time of the season yet again. There are just 5 days left in the summer 2025 season of World Arena, and with it, that means there are only 5 days left to secure your Harsetti skin, at least as of the recording of this video. And I assume if you clicked on this video, it's because you really want that Harsetti skin. So in this video, I'm going to give you the rundown on what I think the best characters to play this season are, give you an example build for each of them, and I'm also going to tell you which slots of the draft to pick them in. Before we jump into it though, a few things. Number one, you need to obviously finish Masters in World Arena in order for you to get the Harsetti skin. So if you're like Silver or Gold, it's not going to cut it. You got to make it to at least Masters rating. Number two, you got to play at least one game in the last 72 hours of the season, which translates to roughly like super late, like 11 p.m. EST or 8 p.m. PST on Tuesday night. Basically, at that point in time, afterwards, you should be good. A safe bet is to play at least one game on July 30th, 2025. That's this Wednesday. If you play at least one game then, and the screen shows that you're still in Masters or higher rating, you will have secured the Harsetti skin. You are completely safe. By the way, if you lose, if you're having a lot of difficulty, it's very frustrating. Don't worry about it. It is not exactly the easiest thing for the new players, people who haven't had a lot of experience in World Arena. What I would encourage you to do is just keep grinding, keep pushing through, and eventually you will get there. It usually takes anywhere from like 10 to like 100, 150 games based on your skill level, your account level, what kind of gear you have, so on and so forth. If you are still struggling after watching this video using this guide, please reach out to me on my Discord or somebody who is regularly on my Discord. I have a ton of regulars that are constantly in the VCs. Feel free to drop in and ask them for advice, but please do it sooner rather than later, right? As I'm posting this video, it is Monday, right? The season ends on Friday. If you are having trouble on Monday or Tuesday, feel free to drop in, ask for advice. If you come to us at like Friday evening, a couple hours before the season ends, there's not really a whole heck of a lot we can do. But again, if you still need more help, make sure to jump into my Discord. Now, let's talk about draft structure, and then eventually we'll move on and talk about the actual heroes and where they are best suited. So, if you're new to World Arena, in case you don't know, when you go into a match, both players will get access to one pre-ban. You will eventually get a second pre-ban, but that is at Masters or higher rating. So you've already gotten the skin at that point. So for now, I'm just going to assume that both players have one pre-ban. You should be pre-banning a strong OP hero that you do not own, or a character that you keep losing to and you're finding a lot of difficulty playing against. Don't go asking like high tier players, legend players, streamers what to pre-ban. You should pre-ban the thing that you keep losing to, that you are having a lot of trouble with, that you cannot reliably counter. After that, the draft structure generally, but not always, will follow what you see like I have here on the screen. So the first pick for both players should generally be either one of the really overpowered units, one of the best characters, most broken characters in the game if it's available and you have it, or it should be an opener. An opener is usually a fast character that has either a lot of debuffs in their kit or a fast character that could support your team and give them various different buffs and increase their combat readiness. The second pick should be some kind of carry, so basically the thing that will win the game for you, usually a DPS. A support, in case you picked something that's like an OP carry, for example, right? So this would be either like a Soul Weaver, or some openers also double as support, such as Lone Wolf Para, something like that here in the slot, or a tank. Tank should be pretty self-explanatory. It's essentially the frontliner that holds the artifact Aureus or Adamant Shield, the character that protects your team, keeps everybody alive from your opponent's aggression. After that, we come to the third pick, which is the most important slot in the entire draft, as this is ban protected for both players. When you make it to the end of all 5 picks of the draft, each player gets to strike and ban one character, removing them from the match, and you play with the remaining 4 characters. Neither player can ban the third pick character, which means that it is super important to your entire draft, right? And as you can see here, I have either tank, core unit, which we'll explain later, or a counter pick. So tank we've already discussed, and if you don't know what to put here, I highly recommend putting your tank with Aureus and third pick ban protection. It is pretty much the easiest way to play, will give you the most longevity, the most survivability in most matches. This is commonly referred to as standard or turn 2 gameplay. and it's probably the easiest way to actually jump into World Arena, the easiest thing to play. The core units, we'll just jump down here, are going to be one of these three here. They kind of have a whole strategy like developed around them, like either Harsetti, which is the slowest playstyle, Zio, which is a very aggressive playstyle, or Ahmed, which is a Cleave playstyle. So you're going to want either one of those, or potentially just a carry that you like to play, like BBK every single game. And then you have counter pick, which I have a list of counter picks here at the bottom, starting with this like top tier counter picks. These are the ones we're going to talk about here in the video. And then the usable counter picks are here in this section, but I will not be talking about them in the video. In case you want to actually take a look at what every character is for the counter pick section, I will have a screenshot that is linked down in the video's description to my Discord, right? That way you could kind of look at it at your leisure, use it as a reference while you're actually playing the game, and see which characters go in which slots. Basically, you're just going to pick like somebody from the tank row, drop it into the tank section, so on and so forth. Anyways, the last two picks here in the draft, the 4th and 5th pick, these should be counter picks. Essentially, your core is your top three. These are the three things that you're going to be playing pretty much every game, the core of your entire draft strategy. And then the 4th and 5th pick are just things that are really problematic, hard for your opponent's first three picks to actually deal with. Got it? Good. All right, let's talk about each row. And again, I'll spend like maybe 10 to 30 seconds on each character and give you an example build. First up is Bossarunka, who is currently the most broken character in Epic 7. If you do not know what to pre-ban and you don't own Bossarunka, it's probably going to be Bossarunka. She's just an insane bruiser / tank character. While she is in the front slot of an enemy team, your opponent cannot use single target attacks on anyone other than her until she is dead. She is ridiculously tanky, has great utility with things like a strip and defense breaks, and also can put up some solid damage to boot. After Bossarunka, we come to Renak, who is the fastest unit currently in the game. She can sap opponents of their stats, making them weaker, and also has an explosive nuke that does AoE true damage. Like Bossarunka, she is one of the most picked or banned characters in the game, so if she's open, there's a very high chance you will either be playing as her or you'll be trying to counter her. Use things like Zio or Fallen Cecilia if you have them. After Renak, we come to Lone Wolf Peyra, who's probably the most universally flexible unit in the format. Peyra is fast, cleanses your team of debuffs, provides team-wide combat readiness, defense breaks to help your DPS, and also with the help of the Uberia's Tooth artifact, actually carry a game. I think if you are unsure of which character to take first in a draft, and Arunka and Renak are not open, Peyra is a very strong and safe pick. After that, we come to my girl, New Moon Luna. Luna is a powerful control character that can steal opponents' passives. You could play her either as a slower bruiser around 250 speed on Etika Scepter, like I have pictured here, or as a hyper fast debuffer near like 290 or 300 speed on the artifact to Hagel's Ancient Book to soul burn and guarantee her passive seal. While powerful, Luna has quite a bit more counters than the other three heroes I've mentioned so far, so she is a bit riskier, but nonetheless still very OP. After Luna, we come to Witch of the Mare Tenebria, who is the newest Moonlight 5-star hero. Like Luna, she is a powerful control character that is trying to lock down your opponent's team. In this case, instead of passive sealing, she's trying to not allow them to get any buffs and also restrict their movement. And if she gets turns later on in the game, she can also double as a DPS thanks to her guaranteed dual attack capabilities. Like Luna, there's no question that this character is OP, but she has quite a bit more counters to her than things like, say, Bossarunka or even Lone Wolf Peyra. After that, we come to Sea Phantom Paladus, who is a very good opener that can strip buffs from the enemy team and also double as a DPS thanks to her guaranteed dual attacks. Since she's always stealth, it's hard for most other speedy opponents to actually deal with her, especially if she's built on high effect resistance, making her pretty easy to understand how to play, especially if you are somebody who's not used to playing fast and doesn't really know the intricacies of what is going to counter your character or not. Basically, all you really have to worry about with a high effect resistance Sea Phantom Paladus is if you're playing against Selene or Red Paladus. After Paladus, we come to Lidica. Lidika's primary use is to set up aggressive strategies like Cleave by removing the opponent's buffs and their ability to use counterattacks. Since she also removes resources, she's one of the best options to use against Afternoon Soak Flan in this format, especially because a fair number of them are built on Guiding Light now, which makes Eligos quite a bit worse. She is a bit riskier to use in this current format, by the way, thanks to the current banner unit, Aram, who we will talk about later. After that, we come to Hellion Lua, who is another control opener that removes buffs from the enemy team, but in this case, she provokes all enemies, giving your team a leg up in the draft and providing a lot of tempo. Like Luna and Witch of the Mare, she does have some pretty pronounced counters such as Mort, which makes picking her first overall a little bit harder to do, but I still wanted to include her here in this section. I would argue third pick Band Protection might actually be her best slot when you know that your opponent is going very slow. And the last two characters in this tier are Peyra and Conqueror Lois. These are basically the two characters you play if you don't have any of the other characters here in this tier. They're usable, they're just not very strong. Like Peyra's like maybe tier 2, and then Conqueror's like tier 3. They're primarily used in Lunatic draft mode. But hey, at low ratings, people don't have a lot of answers to stuff, so maybe you might actually be able to get away with these things. Peyra is usually just built as fast as possible with some effectiveness. And then Conqueror Lois is like 280, 290 speed, maybe even 270, just decent bulk at a good speed breakpoint with like 50% effectiveness, and throw her on something like, say, Warhorn or whatever have you that you want to use for your artifact, and you should be good to go. Anyways, now that the openers and OP units are out of the way, let's talk about the carries. I'm going to start with these 6 characters first. These are the ones that are first pick worthy, and then we'll move on to the another 5 after that. Those ones are actually still usable for sure, just probably third pick Band Protection or later is where I would really recommend picking them up. So let's start with Abyssal Euphine, who is a very, very strong character here in this format. She is an AoE DPS that is going to be really strong if the game goes long, because then she'll get trauma activated and turn into a hyper carry that can absolutely close the door, slam the door on a game. But she also can double as a tank that we'll talk about later in the tank section. And she also has a passive that restricts combat readiness gain, making her very, very good against a lot of these kind of tempo compositions that use things like Lone Wolf Peyra. If you have Abyssal Euphine and you're not sure which character, which DPS you should lead into, she's probably the safest one in the entire format. After Abyssal Euphine, we come to Disciplinary Prefect Arya. She's a health scaling bruiser that comes complete with a bunch of effect resistance for your team. She's a very safe damage dealer in this format to choose, since she gives you protection against most of the BS that openers have, while also being a thick as hell character that's very hard to kill. Similar to Arya, we have Bellion up next, who is a powerful bruiser that deals AoE damage while also stopping your opponent from gaining souls. Bellion, like Abyssal Euphine, is a pretty solid character to take early on in the draft if you're facing Balsa Runka to get around her passive, or you draft her when you see a lot of mages. The only real drawback to Bellion is that you really need 3F as an artifact to take full advantage of her. After Bellion, we come to Empyrean Illianav, who is a Swiss Army knife character. She injures bruisers, does decent damage, can hold tank artifacts to protect your team, has a team cleanse, and also cuts your opponent's penetration damage in half. Penetration damage is pretty much the most common damage type currently in the game, so that's super, super good. Like with Abyssal Euphine and Lone Wolf Peyra, if you're not really sure which character to take, Illianav is a pretty safe pick, as she's good in most matchups, especially if she's holding something like Rise of a Monarch or Adamant Shield as her artifact. After that, we come to Afternoon Soak Flan. Flan is perhaps the most frustrating DPS to play against in the format, and also one of the most powerful. She is guaranteed to follow up on any basic attack with huge burst damage as long as she still has focus. Couple this with her 100% dodge rate, and you have an absolutely bonkers DPS that probably should never have even been made. Her only real drawbacks are if you pick her early, people will almost assuredly slam things like Litica, Solitary of the Snow, or even Guard Captain Crow to try to aggro you down before she ever really gets a turn. She has some insanely powerful combos, by the way, with things like Zio and Harsetti, the characters that guarantee that you have the first turn. And the last character in this specific tier, the first pick-worthy carries, is Spirit Eye Celine. Spirit Eye Celine, after her exclusive equipment, is not only a reviver for your team, but a blazing fast single target DPS that can explode just about anybody in the cast instantly thanks to her free soul burn. This character is frustrating for opponents to fight because after you use your skill 3, she'll counter anyone who critically strikes her, making her difficult to kill unless your opponent plays a lot of oddly specific DPS such as things like Knights on Moas or 3F. Just make sure that when you pick this character that you have turn 1 locked up and you could get her buffs up, because she's otherwise incredibly fragile and can get picked off super easily. Now, let's move on to the other carries, starting with BlazBlue Corinne, aka BBK. This is still your best budget damage dealer in the format that everyone has access to. You're either going to build her 220 speed on full damage, or you just build her base speed with like 150 plus effect resistance, at least 3700 attack, and 280 crit damage. The only reason this character is not higher up in the first pick worthy tier is because heroes like Veronica are characters that hard counter her and everyone has access to. And there are also others out there like New Moon Luna who can seal her and stop her dead in her tracks. This just makes it, I think, a little bit too risky for her to be taken anywhere other than third pick or later. After BBK, we come to New Kid Auden. If your opponent isn't playing a fast strategy, New Kid Auden is surprisingly frustrating to deal with thanks to her 70% dodge rate, as well as 100% counter rate and constant combat readiness pushes. She's primarily used to counter Harsetti, but in this meta, there's surprisingly so few good units I feel like that beat dodge, at least, you know, at the lower rarities, that I think sneaking her in at second pick is pretty strong. Otherwise, you should lock her in on 3 whenever you see Harsetti. After New Kid Auden, we come to Tori, who is a single target burst DPS that really wants to be paired with knights that can protect her when she's in the back slot, such as Adventurer Raz or Dragon Knight Senya. Since her buffs can't be stripped, players need to play oddly specific counters in order to deal with her, such as knights that are on 3F or Moas, or barrier inversion heroes like Desert Jewel Basar. Since her weaknesses are very pronounced, I feel like you don't want to pick her first pick overall, instead choosing to take her either in the second or third pick or even later slots. After Tori, we come to Jenova, who's just another really rock solid DPS. He does huge single target damage in a lot of instances, and I find that newer players don't really know how to play around him, making him surprisingly effective as a pick in later parts of the draft most of the time. The only reason you can't pick him in the first slot is because he's kind of beaten really badly by characters that have stuns, seals, or characters like Empyrean Ilanav and DN. And finally, the last early pick carry that I would consider is Guard Captain Crow. Crow, I feel like, is often forgotten as a DPS in this format, but he's still really strong, especially if your opponent hasn't drafted something like Empyrean Ilanav or Bellion. A simple soul burn turn 1 from his S3 is enough to kill most mid-bulk characters in the game, even if they have dodge like New Kid Auden or Afternoon Soak Flan. Couple this with a stun that ignores effect resistance in his kit, and I feel like Crow is just a really solid single target DPS in this format. Now that we're done with the carries, let's move on to the supports, starting with Aram. All random, all mid is surprisingly a really good support in this format. But don't take my word for it, legend player Vic Chun is slamming her first every single game. Still, she's a bit too new for me to recommend her as an OP or an opener just yet, so I'm playing it safe here in this video by having her as the #1 support in this category. Aram's skill 3 giving 100% combat raise to an ally and fully resetting all of their cooldowns is just borderline broken. You can set up so many disgusting combos with her, like doubling up on BlazBlue Corinne's skill 3 for a complete team wipe, New Moon Luna or other openers to reapply debuffs if they get cleansed, and so much more. Her passive giving you a 3-turn immunity if you get outsped at the start of the game shuts down a lot of the best openers such as say Lidica as well as several others. The character is just really strong, so hopefully you manage to snag her before she goes away on July 30th. After her comes Desert Jewel Basar, who is a support that is primarily used to counter barrier heroes like Fallen Cecilia, Tori, and more. His skill 3 Bastet Roar is not only a team-wide cleanse, but grants immunity and a huge amount of combat readiness. This coupled with his AoE heals makes him a hero that can play the long game, but also turn up the aggression when it's time to make big plays. After DJB comes Blood Moon Haste, who is the best reviver in this format, and he functions as a safety net that stops your opponents from killing other units on your team. If they kill someone first before Haste, it activates his Grudge passive, and his skill 3 Moonslash will outright kill anyone except for the tankiest heroes, reviving your whole team in the process. After Haste, we come to Infinite Horizon Acades, who is primarily a hero you take versus New Moon Luna to hard counter her skill 3. Her combat readiness boosting abilities that she gains until she presses her S3 allows her to loop her skill 2 over and over again, which provides your team with a huge amount of tempo. You can use her slow and tanky like you see her on your screen versus something like, say, Harsetti or New Moon Luna like we already mentioned, or you can also speed her up to use her versus various different Cleave teams and hopefully help you take a turn. After Arcades, we come to Moon Bunny Dominio, who is a useful 4-star to have in your back pocket, as she punishes extra turn users by cleansing all debuffs and giving you skill nullifiers. Particularly good at checking certain Cleave teams such as Ahmed, or even a potential Death Dealer Ray control team. After that, we have Laya, who is a solid cleanser that can function as a bruiser. She's not as OP as she once was, but there are some drafts such as those with a Ram that, provide quite a lot of value. She's largely here though because she is a cleanser that works even through a lot of your opponent's debuffs. Speaking of a lot of debuffs, Still High Lilibet is up next. She is a cleanser that is primarily played versus things like Red Litica or Harsetti. Essentially, if your opponent's team has a plethora of AoE debuffs, Designer Lilibet is a pretty solid pick. Just be aware that even though she is a DPS, she cannot hard carry a game solo, so you need to make sure you're picking other damage dealers alongside of her. And then lastly, in the support section, we have Diane, who's largely here for her full team cleanse and defense penetration capabilities when Empyrean Illinav is banned, or you just simply don't own Illinav. Now we move on to the role that I am most known for playing, and that is, of course, tanks. First up, we have my girl, Fallen Cecilia, who is, in my opinion, the #1 tank in this format, and I don't even think it's particularly close. She provides your team with absurdly fat barriers, holds Arius like a champ, is super easy to build, cuts fixed damage in half, strips opponents' buffs, has a guaranteed provoke on her Soulburn, and can bounce back debuffs on her back at the enemy team, and also, lastly, skill nullifiers. Just incredible character. Pretty much the only reason to not take Fallen Cecilia in this format as your tank of choice is if the opponent has picked Desert Jewel Bazaar, and even then, I might still consider it based on my supports and whether or not the character is ban protected or not. After Fallen Cecilia, we're going to revisit Empyrean Illinav, somebody we've already talked about before. But in case you were unaware, Illinav is largely played for her defense penetration mitigation passive. And since she has the best overall tank stat line in the game, that makes her an excellent Arius holder. So you can build her on protection set with immunity 2-piece offset and have her function as your main tank. Similarly, Abyssal Euphine is exactly the same. She is primarily played for her AoE damage capabilities as well as her CR reduction passive. Just build her on 2000 defense so that way she still has access to her ultimate and trauma status, as well as a ton of HP on protection set and immunity set, and she can absolutely be your tank in this format if you just slap Arius on her. After that, we come to Dragon Bride Senya. While Senya isn't a main tank per se, she's incredibly strong at protecting one person on your team by placing them in the back slot. Senya is a great choice to play when the opponent is very aggressive and they're trying desperately to check that one problem DPS on your team, such as an Afternoon Soak Flan, Spirit Eye Celine, or Tori. If they try to kill that character before Senya, she'll go berserk and can churn out a huge amount of AoE damage. After that, we have Albedo. For those of you who played during the Overlord collab and still have her, protection set on Albedo is still one of the best tanks in the format. If all you care about is reducing the damage your team takes, Albedo is one of the absolute best choices. After Albedo comes Adventurer Raz. Surprisingly, the free-to-play tank that everyone has access to is pretty solid in this format. He is a super well-rounded character who can protect the back slot ally with barriers, and he holds the artifact Arius like a champ. His skill 2 Command Strike also lets him double as a DPS, making him great with these super high-powered attack scaling DPS like Afternoon Soak Flan or Tori. After Raz, we come to Green Armin, who I think is the most underrated tank in the game. Green Armin is a specialist who massively reduces single target damage more than any other knight in the game. If you see your opponent is using heavy single target damage and you need a tank, Armin is one of the best ones you can take in that scenario. And finally, we come to Blue Crow. While I don't really care for this character right now, what makes him worth playing is his skill 3 Summon Siegfried, which can outright kill certain characters. You're primarily taking Blue Crow into things like Afternoon Soak Flan, so that way you know you have an answer to the character, but you're also still drafting a tank. Alright, so for the next 3 sections, I want to highlight 3 core units that allow you to drastically alter the playstyle of your draft. The first character in each of these sections is going to be the core unit you lock in on 3, with the rest of the characters being the characters you take after it on picks 4 and 5. The exception to this is going to be the character Frida, who I just have there to highlight because you're going to want to take her in like the second pick slot before you lock in that character as a core pick, just in case you're afraid of something like, say, Bellion. Now, let's talk about Harsetti. Harsetti is the character you're trying to get this skin for, and she basically brings every single match that she is in to a crawl thanks to her passive, the Law of Skugiheim. If you are not planning to pre-ban Harsetti, you should have characters on your account that are dedicated to fighting with and alongside of her, because she will show up at some point. She is the third most picked / banned hero in the game at the moment for a reason. I find that the best Harsettis are the ones that are built tanky on the injury set, but feel free to build her however you want. You could build her basically as damage, you could build her as control, play her on artifacts like Fairy Tale for a Nightmare or Abyssal Crown. In this section, you may have noticed I'm also cycling through some builds for characters that I regularly play when fighting with and against Harsetti. Of note is young Senya, who, when played with other green units, such as say like Mort, can absolutely wreck a Harsetti team. I also prefer playing specific knights like Last Rider Crow on things like Crown of Glory against her in order to reduce the overall damage and make sure that she can't get any souls. After Harsetti, let's talk about Zio. Zio's passive Supreme Authority nearly guarantees that he has the first turn in any match, and that allows you to do some very, very powerful things. By locking Zio on 3, your 4th and 5th picks can very easily allow you to pivot into a full cleave with characters like Eternal Wanderer Ludwig or Successor Teiyu. You could also use him to bridge for heroes like Silverblade Araminta, Requiem Rowana, or Pirate Captain Flan if you want to introduce control aspects to your draft. You could also throw in heroes like Frida, as I talked about earlier, to play around heroes like Bellion if you are largely playing the mage. And the last playstyle I want to talk about here is Amid Cleave, which is something that's incredibly popular right now thanks to legend streamers like Higa. Due to her exclusive equipment, Amid can be pumped up to some pretty absurd speed levels, and with her kit, she can set up some very powerful team wipes, which are very, very difficult to punish even for experienced players. Heroes like Argent Wave Hwayong, Straze, Blue Kisei, Green Vildred, and even Blue Ida, if you give them greater attack buff and the swift action buff, they could completely wipe out entire teams all by themselves if your opponent doesn't have enough defense. You'll want to consider taking Red Politis as your first or second pick if you plan to play Amid often, as she is the most reliable and common counter pick against this strategy. If Politis is banned or unavailable and you are losing to this strategy, I feel like your next best option is an incredibly fast Sage Balances-on, which we'll talk about later in the video, or some combination of a fast speed contest with Moon Bunny Dominion, and hopefully pray that they press S2. And finally, to round out the video, let's talk about the top tier counter picks. These are the ones I think that you're going to be playing quite a lot throughout the season. There's obviously others that are down below that you will play, but they're more like once every like 10 or 20 games, whereas these are the ones I find myself reaching for the most often. Your mileage may vary, but these are the ones I'm playing a lot, and also the ones that I really wanted to highlight here in this video. So let's start with Inheritor Amiki. Amiki is the character you pick when your opponent is trying to cleave you with entirely squishy DPS, or you just want to random out a Harsetti draft. She's basically the coin flip character of the format, and everyone has access to her, so there's no real reason to not have her built. You build her base speed, all damage and effect resistance, and just pray for good RNG. Make sure you never use her skill 2 or skill 3 unless you're at 1 HP with immortality, and you'll be fine. After Amiki comes Death Dealer Ray, who surprisingly hasn't really felt amazing as an early pick, but still just as degenerate as ever as a closer in this format. If you see your opponent has no cleansers and isn't really trying to cleave you, he's a pretty good 4th or 5th pick to lock down an opponent's entire draft. After that, we come to Bystander Hwayong. Since debuffs are just absolute bullshit in this format, having a bruiser who is totally immune to them is shockingly pretty good. If you see heroes like New Moon Luna or Witch of the Mare Tenebria, Bystander shouldn't be too far away for you as a counter pick. Do keep in mind that this character is pretty terrible into Bossarunka, even though it feels like she should win that matchup. Also note the gear quality that I have on your screen for this character. This is easily the hardest character to currently build in Epic 7, especially without imprints. Just focus on my right side main stat pieces and try to have as little wasted subs as you possibly can. Build what you can, because I sure as hell don't expect everyone watching this video to emulate the build on your screen. After Hwayong, we come to Sage Balances-on, who's actually pretty good even before his buffs, and that's just because, you know, Ahmed's kind of the thing right now. You want to build him crazy fast with high effectiveness and Abyssal Crown and pray you get a sleep or a stun. If you've got him lying around, feel free to dust him off 2 weeks early before his buffs and get some use out of him before he potentially becomes meta. After Balance is on, we come to Veronica. Since everyone has Veronica for clearing chapter like 4, I think, of episode 5, and she's a super hard counter to Bloodblade Corinne, who's very common, as well as Inheritor Amaki, another character everyone has, I feel like there's not really a reason to not have the character built. After Veronica comes Mort, and honestly, Mort's just a major pain in the ass because he completely turns off all counterattacks and has a 2-turn fear on his skill 3 that sometimes ignores effect resistance. The character is just in general very strong, especially when you see your opponent pick things like Abyssal Euphine, Spirit Eye Celine, Blood Moon Haste, and anyone else that desperately needs counterattacks in order to function. After Mort comes Dragon King Sharoon. Decent counter pick versus Death Dealer A, and to a lesser extent, I guess, Mort, but she usually ends up dying through that, but that's besides the point. I wanted to have her here in this section and highlight her because she has an incredible wombo combo with Renak. Since Renak stuns herself on skill 3, this is going to trigger Dragon King Sharoon's passive and boost up her combat race and give the entire team Cascade. This allows you to make some explosive plays off of her AoE defense break, and that gives your team a huge amount of advantage. Second to last one here to talk about is Paldus, who we've already mentioned previously, but you want her built so that way you could deal with Ahmed Cleave. You don't need to build her high effect res like the build I'm showing you on screen. Just copy my bulk, slap on Abyssal Crown, and go as high as you possibly can on your effectiveness stat. The higher, the better. Landing even one stun is game deciding versus an Ahmed Cleave team. And finally, the last top tier counter pick, the one to highlight here, is Solitaria of the Snow. She is played because her passive just turns off the focus mechanic, making her the best option versus Afternoon Soak Flan, and also incidentally solid against characters like Urban Shadow Shu and Sylvan Sage Vivian. Whew, that was a long one. As always, if you have any questions still, feel free to hit me up and down in the comment section below or over on Discord. And again, if you are just still struggling even after following this guide, using everything in it, jump into my Discord, jump into a VC, start asking for help. The earlier, the better. Please do not wait until the final day. We might not necessarily be able to help you. Last season, I got like roughly 30 something people their master's frame and their skin. Hopefully I can do similar or better this season. And if you just want to see me play RTA, go for an Emperor push. I will be streaming that throughout the week, so make sure you get subscribed to the channel, check out the live tab, and see when that's going to be. It's probably going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I usually try to lock it up by Thursday night, so that way I don't have to play on Friday. Anyways, as always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later now.